हम बात कर रहे हैं कैल कॉफ से, जो एक्सपर्ट है इंटरनेशनल अफेयर्स पर, और हम बात करेंगे जिस तरीके की जो सिचुएशन इस वक्त वेस्ट एशिया में बनी हुई है, कि किस तरीके की सिचुएशन है और भारत का उसमें क्या रोल हो सकता है, क्या भविष्य हो सकता है। ये जो इस वक्त जंग छिड़ी छिड़ी हुई, एक तरह की जंग छिड़ी हुई, फुल फ्लेजेड वॉर का खतरा बना हुआ है, उस पर हम बात करेंगे कैल कॉफ से। टू स्टार्ट विथ, हाउ डू यू सी द सिचुएशन एज इट इज नाउ?
To be honest, I think that the Western world, Asia, the main powers that run the world, try to keep peace in the world. I think we're at the crossroads of our existence as a species because we have a fundamental decision to make. Are we going to continue to have more wars in this century? Look what happened in last century. It ended with atomic bombs, and World War II was supposed to be the end of all wars, right? After World War I, which was supposed to be the end of all wars. So we have a war in Ukraine, which is, of course, being caused by Russia. But communist China backs that war, so does communist North Korea. Iran is also a player in that war. They are aligned with Putin. So you have four very deadly, dangerous powers which hate the West. They're enemies of the West. They want to destroy the West. Their view of life and how to run the world is very different than what most people want. Most people reject those kinds of totalitarian dictatorship systems. But yet, these four countries are aligned together to make a last desperate move to try to do what they can or get what they can from the West before Ukraine joins the West. And to be honest, if Russia was not involved in a war, it's possible Vladimir Putin may not even be in power and he may not even hold on to power because they can't continue to suffer the losses that they have. So, what does this have to do with Hezbollah, Israel, Iran, and so on? They're all related. And a lot of people don't know this. The media has failed to report this. I have some news for you. Hamas, when they attacked Israel almost 1 year ago this month, it's a few days away now from the 1 year anniversary. Guess who trained Hamas militants for over a year to attack Israel? The Wagner Group from Russia. A lot of people don't know that. It's really not reported by most of the never on top of it media. So again, Hamas, a terrorist group which seeks to destroy Israel. According to Hamas, Jews are the sons of apes and pigs. It's in the written literature. And they say that Jews must be driven into the sea. They have tried to destroy Israel since they were founded. Hamas has lives for the destruction of Israel. So does Hezbollah. They were trained, this last group that invaded Israel almost a year ago, by the Wagner Group in Russia. Why? Because it helps destabilize the West. So when people say, where are we? What are we going to do? We're going to win. It's a lot more nuanced and complicated than that because until the main actors involved really want peace, they're not going to give it to you. China does not want to see the West to be successful because it's at China's expense in their mind. Russia doesn't want us to be successful in the Middle East because then they can't control Syria, they can't control Iran. Okay, they're not friends with Israel. So until these powers get out of this problem, they're in it and they're just not on the front line. So right now, Israel has struck back. They've gone back to what is called old school. Remember in the 1970s, they went all around the world, hunted down the killers of the athletes at the Munich Olympics in the 1970s. They hunted them all down and got rid of all of them. That's what Mossad did. That's what they're doing now. The strike against Hezbollah sent a very strong message to Iran that it's over. Business as usual is not going to continue. And now I believe India, honestly, as an analyst, has to decide what it's going to do. India, ironically, holds the key to so much world peace. It's amazing. And I know I'm kind of jumping all over the subject here, but you say where we are, well, we're in a huge mess that involves and must have the main powers in there to agree, even to disagree. And we have to stop behaving the way that we are. Israel is no longer going to roll over and allow the leaders of terrorist groups to exist. They should never have all these years. It's a failure of the West to do that. They've struck back. Iran hit with, I believe, it was 181 missiles. Almost all of them were shot down. Imagine if 181 missiles were fired at India. Most of them would get through. So Right now, Israel's going to strike back. It's a question of how. They're either going to target the oil refineries and oil production facilities, or they're going to, against the wishes of what Biden has said publicly, keyword publicly, go after and destroy and bury their rogue nuclear weapons program. So that's where we are today. We're on the precipice, we're on the cusp of the crossroads of our existence of world peace and as a species. Either we're going to learn to get along and live in peace, or we're not. We're going to continue having wars. It's going to get worse, not better. And if we don't stop now and rethink our think, then we're going to have conflict until one side wins or loses. We can't avoid this anymore.
For the benefit of viewers, would you like to sort of recall how did really this war begin? I mean, in brief, as short as you
Yeah.
can be.
Okay. The war actually started in 1947 at the end of World War II, when the Arab world as a whole had agreed to a two-state solution, meaning there would be a Palestinian state, there would be a Jewish state. And then Yasser Arafat's uncle, who of course served Nazi Adolf Hitler, he actually did broadcasts for him, raised a lot of soldiers to murder hundreds of thousands of people in the war. He radicalized a young Yasser Arafat, and then, of course, Israel was invaded by the Arab countries around it. Israel unexpectedly, surprisingly, won, and we've been at conflict ever since. So whenever you have one or more countries who are determined to exterminate you, doesn't matter who the countries are, and you're the country that they want to exterminate, you either win or you lose your battle to survive. And so what the world is suffering from now is this attempt to try to get a two-state solution without all the actors involved wanting a real two-state solution. In the Cold War, Russia did not want a two-state solution, while the West did, because Russia only wanted it under their terms. Remember, they used to control, until the 70s, when they lost too many wars, they used to control Egypt, remember. Well, Egypt made peace with Israel. So how we got here was ignoring all the signs and the buildups over the years by Hezbollah and Hamas. They were openly saying, we're going to destroy Israel. We're going to make these rockets. We're going to launch them. They had several wars that they started and fought, and each one was more intense. And they never were finalized. They never were concluded. And then they decided to go way over the top, do their version of 9/11 almost a year ago in October, when they crossed the border in paragliders and armored vehicles trained by Russia's Wagner Group. They killed all those Jewish people, over 1,000 of them, and Israel said never again. And that is a phrase that Jews live and ultimately die by in history, meaning never again was uttered in the aftermath of the Holocaust. And ironically, it's because of the Holocaust that Israel owes its re-emergence today as a nation. So we're here today because for decades, world leaders ignored the problem, wasted precious time, resource, and money on peace negotiations that were never going to go anywhere. And Israel was saying the whole time, Arafat isn't serious, Abbas isn't serious, Hamas isn't serious. And none of these guys were ever serious about having peace. We know that. But the media has actually lied in their reporting and has said, oh, it's Israel's fault, or Arafat only wants this. No, they don't want to coexist. And until that issue is resolved, one way or another, you will always have this conflict. As long as Russia doesn't want Ukraine to exist and is willing to go to war and kill people, you're going to have a war. It's that simple. So until we really want peace, war is a choice. So is peace. That's the irony of the two. So we're here today because the West has failed to get the people on the same page to really want peace and to force that peace. We always had this, well, they'll work it out, or it's okay if they attack here and there. No, it's not okay. And look what has happened. So Israel's not messing around this time. It's no mercy. They've got nothing to lose except their existence. So you're damn right they take it seriously. But we're here today because of a bunch of avoidance for decades. And we've seen it in the news. It's been all avoidance.
Yeah. So, I mean, how do you see the situation emerging from here? Because Israel, appears that they are not going to back down. Iran, at the same time, they seem as aggressive as ever. So, where do you think the situation is going to be?
Well, right now, the reality is that physics always wins, meaning you've got one country, Israel, that's a nuclear power. It has enough nuclear weapons to destroy every Arab nation, Islamic nation on the planet. That's always been their doctrine. If they're attacked, okay, they don't sit there and nuke people just because they feel like it. So Israel will not hesitate to use nuclear weapons if it is forced to go there. There's nothing wrong with that. India has the same policy towards Pakistan, and it's the right way to go. You have to be able to use them if you have them, meaning you nuclear weapons are useless if it's all talk. If the other side knows you will use them and you are serious, if the situation merits it, God forbid, then that tends to keep the peace, ironically, because ironically, what kept the peace for decades was the threat of annihilation. We're that stupid. We have to get on the edge of the cliff to realize there's only one way to go. We can't go over it. So what happens now is this: Israel's going to retaliate. How are they going to retaliate? Well, they can sit there and fire missiles and blow stuff up. Iran's military cannot compete with Israel, not even a contest. So what can Iran do? Iran can only beat its chest, but militarily it can't do anything except commit acts of terrorism. The problem is that whenever you apply for a job in Hezbollah now, you're dead. Go ahead, elect a new leader. He's not going to live. And that's the key difference now. Israel is saying, yeah, step up, replace your guys. We're just going to take them out. And as long as they want to do it, it's going to go on forever. It actually can continue that way, where a new leader of Al Qaeda is appointed, the US takes him out. That's been going on for years. But what's going to happen diplomatically, economically? Look at the Palestinians. They can't continue to exist in bombed out ruins. So the international community is going to have to come in and say, look, we can't we can't pick up what didn't work before and try to make it work. It doesn't work. So when one side says we're never going to recognize you, you can't negotiate with them. You have to do things to make them irrelevant. So the US has to step up, Europe has to step up. I think India, ironically, is in the best place to try to make China, Russia, even the Middle East get along better. And I'll tell you why. Imagine if India took a side politically on any of this. If it came down on the side of Russia, God forbid, it would change everything. If it came down on the side of the West, freedom and democracy and all the stuff that Indian leaders claim they stand for. And again, I was honored to live in your country for 7 years. You guys are the world's largest democracy. You're now the world's largest population. Imagine if you stepped in and said, China, you're not going to take Taiwan. Russia, you're going to pull out of Ukraine, and we're going to work with the forces to help make that happen. China couldn't do anything. They'd be stuck. Same with Russia, because they're already spread thin as it is. And the only thing that's keeping us in this war is the failure to make the decisive actions to stop it. Let's think this through here. Putin cannot use a nuke. It's not possible. If he does, it's over. So no one's going to use it. So I'm going to use nuclear weapons. No, you're not. So now that we got that bluff out of the way, let's focus on what works. The same thing has to happen with the Middle East. Iran cannot fire hundreds of missiles on Israel because they get shot down. It's a waste of ammo, and they don't have it. They can't make 100 more next month. They're selling them to Ukraine for cash because they need the money. So we need to leverage these points and call these people out and say, stop, and make the price so great that if they continue in engaging in tribal warfare as their favorite pastime, then they're not going to be part of what's called the global community. Let me ask you this question. You know, the Strait of Hormuz, you know how they play games with that, right? They hijack ships to try to control the world's oil supply. Well, it's a fact because I was in the Middle East when some of these talks were being held, when I was going back and forth between India the last couple of years, living there. Saudi Arabia is this close to making their own canal along the line with Qatar. If they make the canal along the side of the Saudi border, Iran has no strait to work with. No ships will go through there. So Saudi Arabia, working with India, ironically, can end a lot of this by just using their leverage, by just taking a step to the left or the right, Right now, they're neutral. That's a problem. I believe we reached a point where neutrality by major players is no longer going to work. You have to take a position. You either stand for what's right in this world or you don't.
Right. Thank you so much, Cal. Thank you so much for joining us. So that was Kal Korff, an expert on international affairs.